Imagine waking up to the chilling realization that the love of your life is entangled in a web of deceit. Join me as I unravel the heart-wrenching saga of betrayal, where every twist and turn unveils a new layer of treachery. I cannot believe I am in this situation. I am not sure where to begin. My fiancée and I have been dating for 5 years. I am in my early 40s and she is in her early 30s. We are planning to marry this summer. Our love remains as strong as it was in the early months of our relationship. We first met at work where we were co-workers from different departments. Our steady and respectful relationship developed into something more. Throughout our time together, we have been genuinely happy. Our bedtime routine is satisfying. We don't have any financial concerns, and we value trust, respect, open communication, and mutual interests. We have a lot of fun together, and there is no mistrust or insecurity. When we follow our own hobbies, I must confess that when we first met at work, she was already engaged to someone else. While I have never engaged in any unfaithful activity, I am not that type of guy. I have to admit, there were times when I felt she was flirting with me improperly. Fast forward to September when COVID was under control in our area. We organized a little dinner party for 3 other couples on a Saturday night. My girlfriend, who enjoys hosting such parties, insisted on assigning seats at the table to everyone. She sat between one of her close female friends and the friend's husband, Chris. During the lunch, as I moved between the kitchen and the dining area while everyone chatted and drank, I noticed an unexpected sight. My fiancé and Chris looked to be holding hands under the table. I averted my gaze, massaged my eyes, and returned to find that they were no longer doing so. However, it was one of those occasions when you discover a break-in at your home. When you arrive home, your eyes record the commotion. But your brain needs a moment, if not minutes, to digest everything. In fact, part of your brain tries to persuade you that this isn't what it appears. Or you did this, but forgot to leave the place this way. It felt similar. As a result, I became more aware of her and felt less secure in our relationship. Fast forward to November, and I started to see something. Some evenings, both of us were fatigued. We prefer to relax in front of the television, each with our laptops or phones. She is an enthusiastic Facebook user with many friends, so she spends a lot of time there during our relaxation times. However, beginning in November and continuing to the present, I noticed that she positioned herself carefully enough that I couldn't see her screen. It was a small difference, but I don't think I was imagining it, because we used to be able to see each other's screens while sitting on the couch together before to this. I contemplated inviting Chris and his wife on our scheduled January vacation. However, I loathed Chris, and a persistent sense of uneasiness made me hesitate. But because I couldn't present convincing reasons for rejecting them, my fiancé became irritated with me. In any event, due to situations such as COVID, we were forced to cancel the getaway. After reading through many discussions here, I understand I'm fortunate in some respects because we're not married, we don't have children, and I don't have concrete evidence of anything going on. However, my intuition is on high alert, albeit not at a critical level. I'm beginning to feel ashamed about how much this new fixation is influencing my life. Here is where I need help. Should I take steps to essentially spy on her? This may include hiring a private investigator to use a voice-activated recorder in her car, or seeking to gain access to her numerous devices, which I consider a serious invasion of her privacy. I'll end this how I started it. I cannot believe I am in this situation. Before I proceed any further, it's important to note that I enrolled here approximately a month ago. I wrote my first post before that since it seemed wonderful to express my opinions at the time. However, a huge change has occurred since then, particularly in our bedtime routine. Our closeness has gradually reduced, which isn't always a bad thing because all relationships have ups and downs. What stood out was an occurrence approximately a week ago that inspired me to return here and muster the guts to post. After our recent proximity, I recognized that my fiancé had handled our bed life differently than normal, not only on that occasion, but possibly the prior 2 or 3 as well. So, without much thought, I said, "Hey, there's something different about how you've been close to me." What struck me as weird was that she appeared surprised. B. She originally disputed it, but C. the next day replied, I believe you are imagining it. Furthermore, don't you think it's okay to switch things up in that field every now and then? What's annoying is that if I hadn't spotted the possible hand-holding incident, I wouldn't have been worried or suspicious of the following clues, replies, and questions. I'd rather gather evidence than tackle the problem. Confrontation without solid evidence is not my way. I don't completely distrust her, but my intuition tells me I should be very wary. My intuition is rarely incorrect. Editing. Where should I set the voice-activated recorder? Your comparison of the short-term cost of employing a private investigator to the prospective expenses of a difficult divorce makes sense. Furthermore, I make twice as much as she does. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to contact her prior fiancé because he'd blame their breakup on me rather than her. That is completely false, yet he would not be a credible or dependable source. Fortunately, we are still renting, but we intend to buy our own home by Christmas this year. Our city's real estate is exorbitantly expensive, so we've been taking it slow while we're still together. It's a scenario that might be simply terminated, and we no longer operate in the same location. Sadly, she has been addicted to her phone for months. I honestly cannot remember the last time I saw it sitting about. This detail bothers me greatly, as does my blindness to what it might mean. Second part of the editing process. I should explain that I began the investigation in several ways. In addition, I have a business trip out of town planned for the weekend following Easter, which will provide an excellent opportunity to study her actions while I am away. Quick update. I hired a private investigator, and they will begin their work tomorrow. I've concluded that I can't wait 2.5 weeks to clear my conscience. So last night I had a heart-to-heart with my oldest and closest friend. He is now aware of what I am going through, and I will be flying to his city tomorrow evening for an extended weekend. I notified my girlfriend about the trip, and her emotional response was unusually mixed. Even if something is wrong, it may become clear at this opportunity. At this time, I've opted against employing a voice-activated recorder. With the wedding scheduled for September, we haven't put much money in it yet. And what we have spent will most likely be repaid, for example, refundable deposits. In other words, this will not result in a complex legal or financial issue. If she is cheating, I will end the relationship discreetly and without raising a scene. The potential anguish of discovering her adultery is already enough. And I don't need to hear her whispering sweet nothings to another man. Furthermore, as several of you have kindly mentioned, this scenario has changed my opinion of her and shown potentially broader difficulties in the relationship. Even without infidelity, I recently met with a private investigator. She is indeed cheating on me with the person I described. I'm in disbelief and completely devastated. On Friday night, he stayed with her overnight and did not leave until the next morning. For whatever reason, they stayed in a hotel on Saturday night till the next morning. The private investigator delivered time-stamped photographic evidence. I am too numb to write any additional updates. It's been quite the day. A dear buddy who was aware of my circumstances offered tremendous support and was prepared when I informed him of the bad news. I was on autopilot at work. But later in the afternoon, I was able to take some time off. In the afternoon, my pal went to Chris's wife's home, the other deceived husband. I apologize for my delayed understanding of the acronyms used here. He rang the doorbell and handed her the photos of my fiancé and Chris. These photographs are time-marked and explicit, so there's no dispute about what was happening. Perhaps the most alarming is from the hotel when they kissed after dinner and then had a goodbye kiss in the parking lot the next morning. It's unbelievable how bold they were. They were not. Even in another city. However, the worst one is the first photo from Friday night, when Chris came at my house. We live in a duplex, so she had to open the front door to let him in. The photograph shows her eyes filled with pure, happy pleasure. I will never forget this event for the rest of my life. About an hour later, my pal arrived at my house after handing the images to the other deceived spouse. He handed my fiancée the surprise I had prepared for her. Inside were the images and a little note from me. I stated that my future goodwill toward her, not in person but in my mind, would be contingent on her readiness to tell the complete truth. I told her that our relationship was ended and that I never wanted to see her again, let alone think about marriage. I gave her till Thursday afternoon to vacate our home, which I completely covered monetarily. And I asked that she leave her engagement ring in a visible location. My friend dropped off the box with my fiancée less than 5 minutes ago. I missed 2 calls from her. She followed up with several worried texts inquiring about my whereabouts, why I wasn't responding, and why I wasn't at work. I can only assume Chris called her in a panic, fearing someone was onto him and he could get away with it. After receiving my delivery, it took about half an hour before I received further missed calls and texts from her begging me to call her. Then came a text saying, "It's not what it seems." Unbelievable. She left me 2 very emotional voicemails right before I started composing this. The first was virtually unintelligible as she yelled and wailed, and the second conceded that she couldn't dispute the images were real, but claimed it was the first and only time they had ever done anything. She stated that Chris took advantage of her after they got too intoxicated on Friday, and things escalated from there. I then told a falsehood, which is unusual for me, but responded with simply one SNS. I noticed you 2 touching hands under the table during our dinner party in September. The same private detective has been gathering evidence for several months. I merely requested images from this weekend to make it undeniable. We're finished. However, if you want to resolve this as peacefully as possible, you must do the right thing and stop lying. B. Stop treating me like a fool, and C. Reveal the entire truth. I don't care what you have to say, but if you don't tell me, and thus yourself, why you did this, I guarantee you will continue to repeat this destructive cycle for the rest of your life. I have not received a response at all. I'd want to thank everyone here for their advice, including some who suggested taking a more dramatic route, such as sharing this with her family. However, this is not my style. I am really familiar with myself. This circumstance is and will be extremely terrible for me to endure. I must stay true to myself. While I like stories of people seeking vengeance for adultery, planning and carrying out such actions is not in my character. My courage will come from not having an in-person chat with her regarding the permanent end of our engagement, refusing to consider the prospect of reconciliation, and asking her to leave our common space. Finally, I have to admit a minor notion, despite my efforts to maintain composure and dignity while writing this. Although Chris is younger than me, halfway between our ages, he is less bright and emotionally sensitive, which I assumed she valued. And the irony is that I'm objectively far more attractive than him. I realize it sounds shallow, but it's true. I've been compared to a well-known British movie star who appears in romantic comedies. This guy, while more muscular, resembles a bulldog. I just can't understand it. He and his wife have 2 small children, so there's that. I apologize for not completely answering some queries some of you have requested in the previous week, but I feel as if I've been going from one nightmare to the next. At least now I know I'm not losing my sanity. I've scheduled a therapy session for next Tuesday, which is the earliest possible day, and I'll be staying with my friend. Fortunately, he is single, so I am not disrupting a family. I apologize for the disorganized character of this communication, but it reflects my current state of mind. Update. As expected, the last day and a half has been quite challenging. On Monday night, my now ex-girlfriend discovered where I was staying, came over, and demanded that my friend allow her in. He did not let her in, and he had to physically stop her from entering. This resulted in a flurry of texts and sad voicemails in which she stated her wish for a second chance and claimed that the previous weekend was the only time they had a physical encounter. She confesses to having an emotional affair since July 2020. I decided not to respond to any of her messages, so after a day of striving to show me affection, her texts became more offensive between Monday and Tuesday afternoons. Last night she claimed that my attempts to end her relationship with Chris and the other betrayed spouse were futile and would fail because the other betrayed spouse recognizes the importance of forgiveness. I find it very remarkable that she believes she has insight into the other betrayed spouse's thought and that the other betrayed husband has already granted such rapid forgiveness. Finally, I broke the silence and asked her a simple question. Why? After some hesitancy, she essentially stated that because I am a perfectionist, she no longer felt comfortable openly expressing herself with me early in our relationship. Around the 2-year mark, she reported that Chris made her feel safe and protected, and that they could talk about everything. When I pressed her for details on how I stifled free communication, she could only recall minor disagreements from the early stages of our relationship, which I thought we had resolved, and were not primarily due to my perfectionism. Despite everything, she wants us to try again and says she'll do whatever it takes. She has urged me not to tell anyone, even my family and friends, about this because she feels we can repair it. I don't believe her at all. At this moment, I am entirely emotionally depleted and fatigued. I haven't gotten a good night's sleep since Sunday, so I could consider taking sleeping pills tonight as a final note. Sorry about the disorganization. My self-esteem has suffered a tremendous blow. My emotional and spiritual image of my ex-girlfriend has been shattered, making any future relationship impossible. Trust has been irreparably shattered. While I'm relieved that I've avoided living with someone of such little morals, I can't help but focus on the physical elements. I am haunted by humiliating questions. Did I not fulfill her sufficiently during our personal moments? Was my physical appearance not to her liking? Did she want a different body type? Although I have no knowledge of their conduct, the sheer concept is extremely upsetting. Update. The past week has been absolutely incredible. It feels like it happened so quickly, but it felt like an eternity. Wednesday night was a catastrophe. My fiancée called and vehemently stated that she would not move out under any conditions. I answered by informing her that she had to. Alternatively, I would share the incriminating images with her relatives. We exchanged harsh words, and I didn't sleep well that night. Thursday morning, I got the greatest text from her, full of apologies for the previous night's dispute. She vowed to pack her belongings and spend the weekend at a friend's apartment, pleading with me not to tell anyone. She thought that we could make many things right. I questioned why I shouldn't share the true reason for our wedding's cancellation, and she argued that doing so would jeopardize any chances of reconciliation. I returned to my apartment on Thursday night, and it was quite difficult to be present. I previously noted how it felt like a break-in, but with a twist. You know your home has been invaded, yet your eyes fail to offer actual evidence. The majority of her stuff were gone, but she had left behind the engagement ring. Something pushed me to contact my fiancée's ex-boyfriend, the one she cheated on with me. I found him quickly on Facebook and messaged him, informing him that I had an important matter to discuss and requesting him to call me. To my amazement, he called me within 45 minutes. Our chat was quick yet meaningful. I learned an important piece of knowledge. Their engagement had terminated due to her recurrent adultery. He had an event that night, but invited me to supper the next evening. The next day, as I drove the 3+ hours to his town, I finally had time to dwell on the wonderful 100 hours in my life. The discovery that my wayward girlfriend had cheated on the previous man sent me into a frenzy of emotions, including rage, relief, sadness, perplexity, shame, and many more. I summoned the nerve to stop at a scenic rest stop about an hour distant from his house. I dialed the number of the other deceived spouse, not expecting her to respond. To my amazement, she did. There were long, sobbing silences on her end. She confessed that her husband had cheated on her prior to their wedding, and that when she was 6 months pregnant with their second kid, they had worked through their troubles, and everything seemed to be well. Surprisingly, despite her husband's numerous infidelities, she portrayed my erratic fiancée as the aggressor and her husband as the victim of a predatory woman. What startled me even more was her admission that many others knew about my fiancée's infidelity with her ex-fiancé, but kept it from me to save my feelings. Finally, when I inquired about her plans, she revealed that he was willing to go to any length to reconcile with my erratic fiancé, including counseling and complete transparency. For these reasons and more, she chose to stay with him. The most essential thing she casually revealed at the end of our talk was her eagerness to restart our relationship after Easter weekend, as he had an unexpected business trip that left on Friday and returned yesterday, Monday. With the shroud of misinformation from my erratic fiancé finally cleared, my senses were on high alert, and I immediately contacted my outstanding private detective to advise him of the situation. After the affair was first revealed, he urged me to keep his services for a little longer because it is normal for exposed individuals like Chris to continue their affairs while being more cautious about concealing them. As a result, I authorized him to conduct additional investigations. I met my fiancé's ex and we headed to a steakhouse. The first 30 minutes were really difficult, with two men who had been betrayed by the same woman, each dealing with a maelstrom of emotions. Nonetheless, the conversation eventually improved. He told me about my wayward fiancé's frequent infidelities during their relationship, as well as his tremendous grief for continuously letting her down. Strangely, his reconciliation with her was prompted by her comparing him favorably to her other relationships, saying, "How could I be so foolish to be with an inferior man when I have you?" After learning about my position, I could sense a range of emotions within him, including wrath and sorrow on my behalf. However, on a more fundamental level, he appeared thrilled that his darkest thoughts about her were validated. I recognized this nuanced response and didn't take it as taking joy in my pain, but rather as finding closure that it wasn't about him or his flaws in our relationship. Understanding this, thanks in part to this great community, felt liberated to me. As much as Friday went smoothly, Saturday was horrible. I awoke to a caustic message in my private Facebook group dedicated to the now cancelled wedding, which included the groomsmen, bridesmaids, and our two primary families. To put it simply, my erratic fiancée posted a statement announcing that the wedding had been cancelled. She went on to say that despite our efforts to address the emotional strain in our relationship over the last 5 years, I couldn't break free from my negative patterns, implying that I might try to spin things differently. I was completely shocked. However, in retrospect, I can't say it was completely unexpected. Many folks here had warned me about the possibility. I'm not going to go into detail about my emotions or activities that day. I didn't do anything I'd later regret. In reality, I remained completely silent without talking with her or the others. Of course, my own family is aware of the circumstances. However, I can't help but wonder why she changed her mind after her Thursday morning emails expressing a wish to reconcile with me. Was the attraction of being with her Chris that irresistibly appealing? Her behaviors puzzled me. You'd think she'd want to keep me around while she enjoys the secret thrill of her affair. She must truly dislike me if she could write such a note, knowing full well that I will most likely never speak to her again. It's both repulsive and astonishing. To make things better, if that's even the appropriate word, I later discovered that my straying fiancé and the possum had checked into a fancy spa about 90 minutes outside of town on Friday night. More photographs, more evidence. They dined at a nice restaurant at the spa resort, which made it simple to take multiple photos of a couple profoundly in love, seated beside each other on this romantic getaway. I'm running out of energy for this update, so I'll try to summarize it as briefly as possible. By yesterday afternoon, armed with photographic evidence from 2 affair-filled weekends, I had chosen the 6 most persuasive photographs and posted them with our Facebook wedding group. I apologized for the delay in responding to my wayward fiancé's deceitful Saturday message, saying that I had been seeing her ex-fiancé and was upset but not shocked to learn that she had previously engaged in similar behavior. I invited the group to think about whether any aspect of myself had ever been emotionally hurtful. I also inquired whether my erratic girlfriend had ever said to any of them, prior to the affair being revealed, that I was emotionally offensive. I believed that honest responses to these questions, combined with the damning images, would show the truth. I've received several encouraging notes from the majority of the group, with the bridesmaids adding an added push of encouragement. Her father invited me to coffee this week. He holds me in great respect. However, I'm not certain I want to meet him, regardless of our strong bond. Finally, as liberating as it has been to be free of this difficult 5-year relationship, the majority of me is crushed beyond belief. Not only have I questioned my stated capacity to observe and understand someone I've lived with for 5 years, but I'm also concerned about the long-term consequences of this experience for all of my future relationships. Yes, I am free, but I will never really trust again. Update. I'd like to address something that many people have asked about, but I haven't discussed yet. She is an extremely attractive woman, sometimes likened to Blake Lively in terms of appearance. I hope it's okay to use celebrities' names here. If not, I apologize and will revise it. I'd like to stress that I'm not stating this because I want her back. I'm only pointing you that she has always turned heads wherever she goes. Her ex admitted on Friday night that one of the reasons he kept accepting her back was that he believed he would do anything to maintain such a beautiful woman in his life. My attitude has clearly changed after I discovered her cheating. However, it's likely that my greatest challenge right now, my total and utter ignorance to what was going on, resulted from believing that the woman inside equaled the beauty on the outside. I did not employ a private investigator to acquire additional evidence because the original images revealed everything I needed to know. What astounded me was that, despite everything, she and he could continue their affair so brazenly as if it meant nothing in a matter of days. Part of me had hoped that the private investigator would uncover nothing this past weekend. Those photographs dashed any remaining optimism that this could be overcome. I appreciate the stark reality check provided by the extra evidence. I wanted her to have the opportunity to confess to her family and our wedding party on her own terms. Some of our conversations last week suggested that she might choose that choice. My main threat is that if you don't reveal the truth about why the wedding is off, I'll have to do it. It was not any form of game update. I'm currently on a work trip out of town, and being alone in my hotel room feels like the first time I've had a chance to breathe and contemplate in a long time. On Wednesday, I contacted the other deceived spouse and wanted to meet with her. She stated she understood why I wanted to meet and that she did not want to go through any more agony. She's a close friend of one of the bridesmaids who told her about my Facebook post. I shared my concern to her about how her spouse was always causing her damage and advised her that meeting with me and seeing the images from the second affair weekend could possibly empower her in the long run. She disagreed. Since I posted about her second weekend of infidelity on Facebook, my wayward fiancée has been reaching out via messages, calls, and even emails. It's been 10 days, and I haven't reacted to her at all. Her tone in the texts has moved from fury to spite. On the day of the Facebook post expressing melancholy and despair in the midst of the week, she has recently attempted to reach out by begging, pleading, negotiating, and making promises. I found a handwritten note from her in my mailbox, detailing why she believes she deserves another opportunity and describing a strategy to make atonement for everything. I believe it was the correct option to expose the genuine reasons for cancelling our wedding to our friends and families. Not only did it immediately invalidate her false assertions that I am an offensive person, but it was also the least serious result of her failure to choose the route of honesty. Explain why our romance ended. I spoke with the groomsmen and 2 of the bridesmaids, and it's clear that they quickly supported me and turned against her for her dishonesty and boldness in claiming that I was insulting. Part of me is apprehensive that her sudden change of heart and desire to reconcile will be affected by the community's reaction to her behavior. I'm concerned that if there had been less censure from our group and a few had believed her falsehoods, she wouldn't be so fast to beg my forgiveness. However, I cannot focus on it. I realize this may surprise some of you, but I agreed to meet with her father on Thursday. We met for afternoon cocktails at his golf club, and our chat was lengthy, challenging, and complex. Her father is a well-known and influential figure in our city. I need to be cautious about what I reveal after that. He admitted to me that he had 2 big relationships when my wayward fiancée was younger, which she never told me about. He feels responsible for her infidelity to me, claiming that she has always looked up to him. He stated that after both romances were revealed, he failed to explain to his daughter why his actions were so bad and how they could have hurt her mother. children, and extended family. He informed me that my erratic fiancée has never loved another guy as much as she has loved me, and this is the first time anyone has held her accountable for her bad behavior. He indicated that I have significant authority in this circumstance and, like a god, can forgive and redeem his daughter. He believed that my capacity to forgive her and repair our connection would not only display greatness, but would also assure her lifelong commitment to me. I must admit that the ideas behind those phrases drew me in. However, he made a mistake when he stated that his influence and reputation would allow him to open doors for me through various measures. I could see how his name may motivate such deeds, but when he suggested this to me, I lost my composure. In an instant, I knew there was little difference between his notion that his name and position could erase any transgression and my irrational fiancée's assumption that her physical attractiveness could explain her repeated infidelities. I was able to answer using the ideas I received from this thread. I do not think you comprehend. It will take years for your daughter to reintegrate into my life in any way, I explained. For me to consider being with her again, I would need to see genuine understanding, empathy, self-awareness, and genuine regret. I also mentioned that her trip to that point will be lengthy because she has been engaging in this activity for years and the damage is extensive. To his credit, he respected my position and requested more time. On Friday morning, a few hours before I was supposed to leave for the airport, the other betrayed spouse called in with a frightened voice and asked to meet for coffee. I agreed to meet because of respect and dignity. I won't go into detail about the awful 40 minutes we spent together. However, seeing the second set of images was a traumatic event for her, making it difficult for her to digest. By the end of our chat, however, she appeared to be making some headway in accepting the reality of her husband's conduct with one of her own friends. And I believe she has begun her own hard and difficult journey toward recovery. I debated alerting her to this thread, but I eventually chose to keep it private. I don't want to exacerbate an already complicated and delicate situation. Finally, yesterday, just before supper, I received a lengthy email from my fiancée's absent mother. She expressed empathy for how I could be feeling, but then went on to say that her daughter had told her all the specifics of the affair. She indicated that her daughter was completely broken, and she asked that I take some time to consider giving her another chance. My hurt and feelings in all of this seemed like an afterthought. Update. When I returned home yesterday evening, my fiancée had left a handwritten letter in my mailbox as promised. Initially, I fought the impulse to open it and went to bed unsure whether I should read it at all. However, sleep eluded me, and I finally gave up and opened the letter. I intended to sleep on it, gather my thoughts, and then post a synopsis of the letter here. So, here I am today. She started with a frank apology, expressing her sincere sadness for the suffering she had caused me. She then revealed that she and Chris had decided to end their relationship for good. She then went into great, almost clinical detail about how I had been her finest lover, drawing parallels to Chris and her past partners. While I am no longer concerned with this element, I will give her credit for the quantity of information she supplied, which was both unexpected and rather moving. She then laid out a timeline of what happened a few weeks before the September dinner gathering, during which I assumed they were holding hands under the table. Chris phoned her to talk about his marital problems with his wife, who happened to be my wayward fiancée's acquaintance. He seemed to be looking for her insights. They met for coffee one workday morning, maybe 7 or 8 days before the dinner party, which led to a week of messaging between them. They gathered in a park the morning of our dinner party, posing as if they were on a long shopping expedition. There, he professed his great feelings for her. She admits to feeling terrible about falling for his words, but his main point was that if she felt a fraction of what he did for her, she should scratch that itch before committing to marriage. She stated she flatly denied his proposal. However, during the dinner party that same evening, he played footsies with her beneath the table. She considered it unlucky that I occurred to look back right as he made physical contact with her. She added that he had also begun this. Their first kiss was in late October. Surprisingly, while she was visiting an affair partner, and the other betrayed spouse's homes for drinks and dinner over the weekend. While I was away, another betrayed spouse went to put their children to bed after dinner. During this time, he passionately kissed my wayward fiancée when his wife was out of the room. She admitted it was wrong but found it fascinating. Throughout November, he seemed to have put a lot of pressure on her to agree to let him and the other betrayed husband join us on our January vacation. A large amount of their text chats in November and December were about various scenarios he designed for them to indulge in an illicit affair right under our noses. She gave limited specifics about when their affair began, indicating that it started in early February. They insisted on meeting in my house as frequently as they could. She said that his ultimate thrill was humiliating me. Surprisingly, her primary point was as follows. She admitted that adultery may run in her family or be in her DNA, but she claimed she was willing to leave everything behind because I am a perfect man. Her twisted thinking was that by having an affair, she could rid herself of her issues and prepare for a committed relationship with me. She also stated that one of the main draws of the affair was her unusual repulsion to this man, who had previously made her feel comfortable and protected, along with his intention to humiliate me. She hoped that her distaste at choosing him would help her overcome her final desire to cheat. She also indicated that she planned to live with her parents indefinitely. She indicated her desire to enter treatment for the first time in her life. She promised to send me a monthly letter updating me on her progress. She said she wanted to win me back, but only on my conditions. She revealed that my decision to cut her off in the manner that I did made her understand how much she genuinely loves and desires me, and she was saddened by her actions. She apologized for her past comments on emotional offense, especially since they were made public, but she did not totally retract them. Instead, she adjusted her statements to suggest that I hold myself and others to an excessively high moral standard, which she finds oppressive. She recognized her admiration for my integrity, but contended that it is hard to live up to the exacting standards I set for myself and others. She suggested I meditate on this last comment honestly after reading everything. I'm too emotionally fatigued to describe how I feel. I'm not even sure which feelings are left or available to me at this point. I will never see her the same way again. Perhaps I set too high expectations for myself, and I should be more forgiving of my own and others' imperfections. But there are still qualities that draw me to her. Rest confident that I will continue to have no contact with her. The other betrayed spouses contacted me, requesting another coffee meeting this Thursday because our previous coffee chat appeared to help update the community's analysis of my wayward fiancé's letter, which provided the necessary wake-up call for me to read her words with the insight required to see through all the nonsense, manipulations, and evasions. My challenge was to retrieve the engagement ring while keeping my no-contact posture with my straying fiancé. So late on a Tuesday night, I sent an email to my fiancé's father, thanking him for his daughter's letter, but explained that by not returning the ring, she was not honoring the boundaries I had established. He responded early the next morning, agreeing with me, and suggested we go to lunch at an exclusive restaurant. What a family! During the first half of our lunch, we discussed everything but the core issue. It was like navigating a 700-foot iceberg beneath the surface of the discourse. Eventually, he produced the ring and returned it to me, but not without some drama. He continued to blame himself for his daughter's difficulties, noting that her mental health was under serious threat as a result of the shock of being denied something she wanted, which appears to be me, for the first time in her life. However, things took a bad turn between us when, near the end of the meal, I leaned back in my chair, carefully observed him for about 10 to 15 seconds, making him very uncomfortable, and then said, "You know, let me tell you something. By the time I was 13 and possibly much younger, my mother taught me a great mantra: accept responsibility for your actions. When I was younger, I was good at finding ways to shift responsibility for my mistakes onto others, or make various excuses. Before I even started high school, my mother taught me that admitting our faults is freeing, it is empowering." He appeared to be split between rage and humiliation, and we shared a long quiet. I carefully passed a photocopy of his daughter's letter across the table, saying, "I am sure you haven't read this. He clearly had not read the entire text. He crumpled it up and pushed it back across the table towards me. Then, in a malicious tone, he remarked, "If you can't accept your fiancé's truths at face value, you have no chance of reconciling this unfortunate temporary situation." I glanced at him, shocked, and said nothing. He went on to say, "It would be nice to see you two together again. I don't appreciate the way you spoke to me this afternoon, and to be honest, I thought you had a lot more class. But I will ascribe it to your suffering. You have to do the right thing here." So I asked, "And what is that?" He stared at me for approximately 5 seconds and said nothing. I walked over to the front and paid the bill before leaving, so that man could have become my future father-in-law. But in truth, I had a wonderful coffee visit with the other deceived spouse several hours ago. It was difficult since I discussed the contents of my estranged fiancé's letter with her, but I chose not to show it to her for a variety of reasons. "I'm content." She then went on to explain me her husband Crisby's version of events, which was very astonishing. It was essentially my estranged fiancé's letter, but when the responsibility was switched to her, he painted himself as the victim and she as the angry perpetrator, and he stated that my erratic fiancé excused everything by stating I'm emotionally offended. Beyond the shock, her timeline revealed that the romance had most likely begun in June 2020. Chris had undoubtedly admitted to specific incidents from around that time, with my wayward fiancé serving as the agent of influence and temptation in each occasion. Something amazing happened after we each shared our tales from the crypt deeds. We both started chuckling nervously, then moved on to childish giggling, and then burst out laughing. It was a great therapeutic moment. Honestly, that was the most liberated and light-hearted sensation I'd had in months. She later became teary-eyed and expressed her uncertainty about what she would do. However, she knew that he is just as troubled as my wayward fiancé, and she needed to find a way to get away from him, so that is where things stand. Despite the uplifting and powerful experiences of the last 48 hours, as I sit here writing this piece, I am suddenly overcome with grief, loneliness, and a sensation that I may never truly recover from this and will never be able to trust again. One thing is certain, I will not be bringing my straying fiancé back. I'm in the process of writing her a final letter, politely requesting her to leave my life forever. What a mess. And as I've already asked and will continue to ask, what was all this for? Edit. The following letter was sent yesterday afternoon. I understand that some of you may disagree, particularly those who have questioned why send a letter at all, but I believed it was vital to share my writing with this group. Despite the expected unfavorable reactions, it's satisfying to have written and submitted it. Clearly, her name is not Blake, but Blake. This is a 3-part letter. This is the final time I will communicate with you. I suggest that you stop contacting me in any way from now on. I also respectfully request that neither your family nor any friends contact me on your behalf in the future. If you or your family disrespect this limit, I may have to take legal action to defend myself. Your choices and actions have irreparably ruined our relationship. Regarding your letter, I'm glad to hear you're seeking therapy. I hope it is beneficial and that you acquire a degree of self-awareness you have never had before. The environment has and continues to promote your behavior. So even if you manage to fill large voids inside yourself, you must break free from your family's influence. I appreciate that you returned the ring. I'd like to reflect on a period when we were truly happy together. Probably the last. During the zenith of the COVID outbreak, we escaped to your folks' oceanfront cabin for a fantastic long weekend. We were exploring some high rocks on a Friday afternoon. And you got dangerously close to the edge, risking plummeting into the sea. I drew you back and warned you of the danger. Later that evening, around the fire, we talked about that moment. You mentioned that risk is good. It makes us feel really lively. And I know you'll always be there to pull me back. Now I realize that everything about you and your ambitions to damage our relationship was captured in that one moment. While I'm little disappointed in myself for not seeing it sooner, I'm grateful that I can now recognize you for who you truly are. I only hope you have the strength to change, but I will not be a part of that process. This morning, I had breakfast with the wedding's maid of honor. That will never happen. She was with my ex-fiancée on Saturday when she received my final email. Apparently, my ex-fiancée was devastated and spent the entire night crying in her bed. This is impossible not to find hilarious, because it sounds like the reaction of a 13-year-old who was unable to enjoy a sleepover with their best buddy on a Saturday night. More concerningly, the maid of honor informed me that when her father received the note, he grew enraged and just stated that he will pay. To be honest, I'm concerned that he'll seek vengeance against me. I understand that many of you have cautioned about this as well. So how can I protect myself from this potential threat? In addition, while the maid of honor is a close friend of my previous fiancée, she has been very supportive of me throughout this journey. Toward the end of our breakfast, I thanked her for keeping me informed and inquired why she wanted to help. She revealed something I was unaware of. She broke up with her long-term spouse approximately a year ago after he constantly cheated on her. What's really intriguing is that the maid of honor believes my ex-fiancé was first drawn to her as a friend, for the same reason she was pulled to me as a boyfriend. We both symbolize stability, dependability, and honesty, attributes that my ex-fiancé appears to lack. The maid of honor was not surprised that my ex-fiancé cheated on me since she believes she has a history of doing so. But she did think I may be an exception. She remains a friend to my ex-fiancé, but she also empathizes with me and believes I made the correct decision. Moving on to some concerns regarding another betrayed spouse. Until Thursday, we had been exchanging brief texts every day, expressing support and encouragement. I haven't heard from her since we met, which is understandable, given that we're both dealing with tragedy. In addition, we have not heard from her. The maid of honor stated that the other betrayed spouse has been sending furious and insulting messages to my ex-fiancé via text, phone calls, and emails for the last few days. This presents a problem and a question for everyone here. Concern. I'm concerned that the other betrayed spouse's resentment of my ex-fiancé will be impacted by Crisby's negative influence, and she will be likely to blame only Barb rather than the wayward spouse. I am anxious for her well-being. This raises the question, what should my boundaries be in this situation? I believe that just as you have gently supported me, I should do the same for the other betrayed spouse. However, I believe I can guide without insisting. Just like you can lead a horse to water, I'm wondering how persistent I should be in offering assistance. Many of you suggested being there for her, and I attempted to do so, but I can understand why I would remind her of the anguish she's going through and why talking to me might trigger memories of similar violence done to her. I appreciate your assistance in advance with these matters. As for myself, I'm going through emotional ups and downs. I have no desire to have my ex-fiancé back in any way. This is who I am today. However, I am currently battling with the concept of closeness in future partnerships. I'm concerned that A will bring a lack of confidence to the process, which has never been an issue previously. Closeness has always been a good, strong, and life-affirming feeling for me, and B, I'm scared that intrusive thoughts will interfere with my ability to enjoy the company of someone other than my ex-fiancé. Perhaps these concerns are relatively unimportant at this stage, as my primary goal should be to get through the next period without thinking about a new relationship. I apologize for the chaos in this post. It's more of a mental dump following a critical meeting with someone strongly involved in the subject on both sides. Good luck to everyone. Update. This morning, the police called to inform me that my ex-fiancé, who had previously been unfaithful, had brought a false charge against me. My lawyer is aware that I utilize this forum, and although appreciating its beneficial effect on my mental health, has instructed me not to discuss any further details until this situation is concluded. Needless to say, this charge is completely false, and I am really upset. Update. Despite the fact that I haven't posted here in a long time, it has been a very draining month. I still don't have the stamina to offer a full explanation of all recent events. Here is a concise summary. The good news is that the police inquiry did not take long, only 11 days. My lawyer called me on the first Monday in May to let me know that the police had dropped the case, and that was the end of it. I continued to work throughout that week and a half because it kept me sane. When I got the fantastic news, it took me a few days to comprehend it properly. By the conclusion of the week, I had determined that a 5-day break would benefit my mental health. I took Monday through Wednesday off last week, and my vacation began on Friday, May 7th. I was having a nice barbecue in my backyard, sipping wine and enjoying the cool evening air when my ex-fiancée entered via the side gate. It was weird to see her. It had been a while. She appeared like a different person. I didn't recognize her. It was an unusual, yet soothing feeling, and it made me wonder whether I had been moving on from her faster than I knew. She apologized for breaking in, but insisted on speaking with me in person. During the first 2/3 of the encounter, I was really angry. First, because of the inevitable circumstances surrounding her infidelity and how it had wrecked our lives. Second, she was dressed provocatively, as if she was attempting to entice me, and she was acting very flirty, as if we were on our second or third date, going to sleep together for the first time. Third, she breached my personal space. Finally, she implied, without officially admitting it, that her father had pressured her into making the accusation. She said that because of her father's contacts with various branches of the police force, it was all part of a plan to intimidate me. However, when she understood the repercussions for me, she changed her mind and said that she made the charge while in a deep state of mental turmoil, similar to a fugue state. To my credit, I remained extremely calm and accomplished a few things. I expressed the terrible pain and harm she had caused me, and I made it obvious that I would never completely forgive her. I informed her that I no longer want to communicate with her or her family. I told her that the best thing she could do for me was to never contact me again. I brought up my conversation with her ex-partner, which made her quite angry. To her credit, she was able to contain her wrath and use it as an opportunity to admit that she is terribly distressed. She understood the importance of serious treatment in understanding why she had been unfaithful for so long and breaking free from her family's negative effect on her. To her credit, she listened intently and apologized. She stated that she now knew our relationship was finished and promised to leave me alone. She did add that A, she had only been unfaithful once, and B, her ex-partner was no match for me in any manner, and that she felt coerced by him. I just shook my head sadly and watched her walk away. I enjoyed a wonderfully pleasant weekend, and my interaction with her was ultimately liberating in many ways. However, the following Monday, my ex-fiancée sent me an email containing a revealing photo of her sunbathing. I decided not to respond. The next day, she sent an even more revealing photo with a comment that said, "I know you can't dislike these that much if you're not telling me to stop." Then the same day, she gave me a really explicit video of herself. At that point, I did respond, expressing my rage, and told her that I would take legal action to remove her and her family from my life due to their persistent pursuit. Later that evening, she wrote back, apologized, and stated that she understood her need for assistance and would not contact me again. I have not heard from her since, although it has only been 5 days. The following is the most complex section of my update. The other betrayed spouse contacted me on Friday night to apologize for her silence, and we had a wonderful conversation, both then and on Saturday. It was so good that she basically invited herself over for cocktails yesterday afternoon. On the surface, she is attempting to break free from her controlling and toxic husband. But deep down, it's clear to me that she still loves him and may want to harm him as much as she can. To get to the point, we exchanged a passionate kiss, whether it was to win him back or for another purpose. I wonder whether it's abnormal that my ex-fiancée's images and videos piqued my interest. My desire had almost vanished during this torture. So the bizarre combination of feeling like my ex is actually out of my life, along with the respect for those photographs, awoke some latent longing within me. I could have slept with the other betrayed spouse, but we both understood how easily we could become close. So we paused. However, she has been texting me frequently since then and is attempting to schedule another meeting. I understand this is not a nice scenario. The temptations are evident. 1. I haven't been close in a long time and I'm not ready to start dating, so this may appear convenient for a sense of payback. 3. I feel like one of her few healthy supporters. I'm also knowledgeable enough to recognize that less than 5% of her conduct is motivated by true attraction or desire for me, with the majority being from her toxic feelings toward her unfaithful husband. I also recognize that if I was close to her, my ex-fiancé would be more likely to return to the picture, but in an even more disturbed and obsessed way. That summarizes my entire update. In truth, it may not be as dramatic as my prior updates. Overall, I believe I am improving. I am resisting the temptation. My ex-fiancé and I are feeling less sad and crushed than when I initially learned of the treachery. However, I recognize that I am wounded, as indicated by my decision to kiss the other betrayed spouse, and I intend to continue seeking counseling. Finally, it was encouraging to check in on a regular basis and see how people were supporting and caring. This facility has been just fantastic for me. I'd want to express my gratitude for your helpful responses. One of the main reasons I've stayed here and used it as my primary source of non-legal advice is that I received genuinely helpful, sober, and honest advice in a secure setting. It serves as a much-needed reality check for people dealing with the repercussions of betrayal. Looking back on my activities since my ex-fiancé abruptly showed up at my house, it's evident that her visit put me into a tailspin. However, I now feel as if I have broken free from the effects of the previous week or so. I had a productive conversation with my lawyer early this morning. He wasn't thrilled with me for even responding to my ex-spouse, but he's relieved that I didn't do anything with the photographs and videos, such as forward or download them. One essential issue to note: some posters have urged that I erase all of her emails, but my lawyer strongly disagrees. He believes they provide clear evidence of continued stalking by my ex-fiancée and her family. Indeed, I am glad to announce that he is taking deliberate efforts to file a lawsuit against my ex-fiancée and her family. This legal action stems from their bogus charge against me and a well-documented habit of stalking and intimidation. I've also blocked her on all possible platforms. My brother, a genuinely beautiful person, will arrive on Thursday and stay with me for 710 days. It will be an excellent opportunity to spend quality time together, especially given his hectic schedule as a husband and father. He'll also function as a moral compass, guiding me away from the pitfalls that entangled me last week. On a similar issue, I just had a productive phone contact with the other betrayed spouse. With no prompting from me, she said that our brief kiss was inappropriate and motivated by a desire for revenge more than anything else. She understands why we won't be able to see each other in the near to medium term, so this shouldn't be a problem. However, she does want me to serve as an informal counselor for her over the phone. I gently but firmly emphasized that I couldn't take on that position when she was upset because her previous therapy experiences had not gone well, and she sees me as a safe person. I highlight to A, that it is unhealthy for me to be her quasi-therapist, B, I need to isolate myself from everyone engaged in this disaster, and C, she should have someone ask her more difficult questions in order to empower herself and maybe break free from her obnoxious husband. I believe she will follow my request for no communication between us for the next few months, since she understands my fragile legal condition and does not want to compromise my safety. I also have a fortunate piece of information to share. My attentive neighbor told me last week that they witnessed my ex-fiancé sneaking via the side gate on that Friday night. He is willing to give a statement. This, according to my lawyer, is an important card to have in our back pocket, as it might potentially constitute trespass if necessary. It feels empowering to take preemptive measures against my ex-fiancée and her family. Throughout this incident, I felt like a victim, and my ultimate desire isn't necessarily justice or recompense, but rather that the father and daughter leave me alone. Finally, When I reflected on the last 7 days, I realized how much damage I had experienced as a result of it all. Since uncovering the infidelities, I've been so focused on taking action and being productive. The majority of it was positive and useful, but I may not have started correctly. The grieving process. While a part of me longs for the companionship of a nice woman, I recognize that it would be unjust and selfish to burden her with my emotional baggage while the trauma is still fresh. I do feel lonely, though, and I'm hoping my brother's visit will help ease some of that loneliness. Here is the next story. A 32-year-old man have been married to my wife, a 30-year-old woman, for 5 years, and it feels like she's changed completely in the last year. We were both established when we met, and it initially appeared that we shared similar ideals. I attended a trade school and learned a highly technical job. I toiled at low-wage, entry-level jobs until proving myself and establishing a coding reputation to the point where my recommendations outweighed my schooling. My wife has a graduate degree and works in management. This resulted in some friendly tension, as far as I could tell. Initially, I grumbled about middle management. I perceived them as impediments to completing chores. My wife viewed middle management as essential for guiding staff and resources. Personally, I was stuck. Personally, I was saddled with a horrible series of middle management that believed code developers were modular and interchangeable. They imposed unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and caused scope creep. Every time I told her about the next idiotic decision my management made, she constantly took a side note. She has never met him. He sees things that you don't, she claims. After roughly a year of dating, I learned not to tell her about my day at work. If it didn't involve days off or raises, I always felt like she was upset that I didn't pursue a 4-year or graduate degree. She pushed for it early on before marriage, but when I explained the loans and debt, she abandoned it. She was somewhat debt-free when we married, as was I. And we had similar earning power, as previously said. About 2 years ago, I started working at a company whose owner spoke to me directly. He saw worth in me and my potential. I now earn 50% more than my wife, and my manager is a guy who gets along well with me, while not the technical leader. He exemplifies what a Scrum Master should be. I would say he understands how to stay out of my way, but it sounds confrontational. He's an excellent supervisor. Overall, the first 4 years of marriage were very successful. I didn't whine about work bosses, and she didn't pressure me to put thousands of dollars on paper. We had fun. We had date evenings several times a month, shared hobbies, cooked, read books, and watched movies together. When the first lockdown began, we both worked from home. Our house is really good, with 3 spare bedrooms in case we ever have children. One had already been converted into my office, and when the lockdown began, we changed the second into her office. We both telecommute, but we both had quite different perspectives on it. I would get up, eat breakfast, shower, shave, and dress in a suit before walking into my home office. I despise suits and ties, by the way, yet they have put me in the mental condition of, okay, this is work for me. My wife, on the other hand, gets out of bed, has breakfast, brushes her teeth, gets dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, and goes into her office with the iPad to play Candy Crush in between emails. I believe I see it as work from home, and she does as well. I digress. It's the craziest thing, how proximity creates distance. She has numerous meetings each day, and I can tell because she has her door open and I can hear them. I have one meeting every day, a scrum, and it is brief. I close the door for mine. She claims she felt humiliated 5 months ago when I locked my door for the daily scrum. I stated that it was for peace and to keep my mind on work. She said she thought I was hiding something. I tried to continue our interests together, but she dismissed it because we already see each other all day. I should have pressed, but I did not. Perhaps I should not have considered the lockdown as a temporary measure. It became particularly terrible when her firm implemented a partial office reopening. She jumped at the possibility to share 50% of the company. Back in the reorganized office. For social distancing. I do not blame her. I miss working at the office. My employer has yet to establish the office, and as long as I have access to my development environment, it is unnecessary. I believe several of her other co-workers got into her mind. She should stay after work to hang out with them and get drinks at a co-worker's house. I pressed. I wanted to learn more, but she was secretive and guarded. She grew increasingly cold. It felt like I had a roommate rather than a wife. At that moment. Last month on a weekend, she placed her old iPad on the desk and asked, "Can you wipe this? I'd like to give this to my niece." I shrugged. I do things like that for my family all the time and don't give it any thought. She left to another company gathering and I turned on the iPad. Maybe my wife was becoming too brash. Maybe she assumed I would not inspect it and instead perform a factory reset. The point is, I checked and found her texts, app, photos, videos, an IMS with her employer. They have been having an affair for 2 months. I can't convey the sensation in my veins. It was as if blood had turned to ice. It reminded me of the incident in Equilibrium when the polygraph flatlined. I copied everything and saved it in cloud storage. I utilized for programming projects outside of work and began hunting for a lawyer. I didn't confront at first since I wasn't sure what to do. The new sensation in my body felt like I was walking through water while also being numb. She did not notice or care. We were already in the lifeless bedroom at that point. I suppose we were in the roommate stage. I contacted the lawyer and he wanted to continue researching while I kept my lips shut. He suggested that I hire a private investigator and recommended a reputable one. We spent the last 4 weeks accumulating evidence while he prepared to file for divorce. Be patient, he kept telling me, and my ice-filled veins that her apathy made things easier at first. My lawyer told me yesterday that the paperwork was almost finished. Our state is at fault. And the PI received images, videos, and texts. It was essentially a foregone conclusion. Then yesterday night. I'm not sure what happened to me, but the ice turned into flames. She arrived home late, of course. I can't recall what she said to me, but I took off. I hoped it was worthwhile to have her boss. She became cruel, unpleasant, and malicious. She claimed I wasn't there for her emotionally. I spent the entire day relaxing at home, even if I was the primary breadwinner at home. I wasn't intellectually stimulating, although working in a highly technical field. When I told her I had a lawyer, she chuckled, laughed. She called my bluff pitiful. There was no way I was leaving her because even if I divorced her, she would receive half of my salary if I remained with her. At the very least, I'd be able to have sex occasionally, so I shouldn't botch this up. She was a different person. I told her, that is not a marriage. She laughed again. Honey, this is the 21st century I desire. We can have our cake and eat it. She laughed again and then went to bed. I emailed my manager and explained that I needed a week off to deal with a family situation. He, of course, granted it. I slept on the couch at my workplace this morning. She chuckled as I dressed and just replied, "Don't wait up." I went to my lawyer's office and he stated he had the paperwork ready. He brought a process server with him and asked how I wanted the paper served. I informed him about my lawyer, bless him, and chuckled, saying, "You better not. I've had a lot of folks want to perform a charming revenge serving, but I always talk them out of it. Judges lack a sense of humor." He said it may cost me alimony or assets. I didn't care. Her words scorched me. I wanted her burned back. The lawyer did his best to keep persuading me not to. But he gave in when he saw how serious I was about this. The process server. He listened to my concept. He laughed as well, saying, "You are my hero." I had a specific order. Something with a rush cost because the process is complete to pick it up and deliver it with. The papers to my wife's workplace. When the procedure server finished, he told me what happened. He stated he had to. He said he arrived at her office with a large box and papers. He found my wife talking and joking with a bunch of co-workers and friends, and asked for her name. She confirmed and inquired as to the subject matter. He placed the package on a neighboring desk and opened it. It was a cake with a bespoke image printed on the frosting. I had no idea that was a thing until this morning. The visual was of my wife and her boss in an embrace, clothed but clearly communicating through the words, "Here is your cake. Eat it." I typed icing above the image processor. Placed the papers next to the cake on the table. "You have been served," he said. What followed was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office noticed the cake. My wife panicked out and swallowed a large cake box from the table, which fell on the carpet. However, with the image still visible, several of her co-workers began berating her, prompting her to cry and shout. The process server made a quick retreat. My phone blew up, so I continued sending her to voicemail. I do not bother reading her texts. She hasn't returned home yet, but her mother texted me that she will be staying there for now. The euphoric rush of the cake felt amazing at first, but as the hours passed, I began to think about my lawyer's statements. Let us check in on the update. I'm overwhelmed by the outpouring of support I've received over the last week. I'm still off work, but my supervisor has decided to grant me 2 weeks instead of the one I requested. He is a good dude. I've already divided our money in half, transferred my half to an account in my name, and adjusted auto pay for the mortgage, credit freezes, and other things my lawyer instructed me to do with the household assets. First and foremost, we have no children. Second, I am visiting a therapist to help me. I discovered one who is experienced in dealing with infidelity. I've seen him twice, and am feeling much more balanced. There are some strange low spots, but nowhere like the same amount of fluctuation between the two. After the cake stunt, I'll absolutely follow my lawyer's advice on anything from now on. He responded, "You can either be happy or right." In terms of adopting his advice, which I understand now, he informed me that if my wife wants to return home, I am not legally authorized to kick her out, but I should document any interactions with her. She's not staying at home again. She's still at her mother's, but she wanted to stop by on Saturday to talk. My lawyer informed me I could, but if he wants to chat, he would like to do it in his office with her own counsel present as well as himself. Of course, I sent her an email with this information, and she replied that she did not have a lawyer. My lawyer stated that I had to show up in his office, have witnesses there, and record the meeting, and that my wife was aware of this requirement before speaking with her. She did accept. So I had 2 mutual friends enter, all 3 of us with phones on the table, ready to record. She walked in and tried to give me an awkward embrace, but I just put my palm up, and the phone began recording as the 4 of us sat down at the kitchen table. She truly apologized. She described feeling like she was watching a movie rather than in control of her life, yet it was fascinating and exciting. She asked if I wanted to know why. I said I didn't care at this time. She thought she owed me that much and informed me. She stated that when she returned to the office once it reopened, she became particularly close to 3 female co-workers. They are all a few years older than her, and 2 of them have divorced. She claimed they wormed their way into her skull and informed her that she owed more than she received. They kept asking her about her home life. The ringleader appeared to be psychoanalyzing me because of my wife's stories. My wife told them about my problems with bosses in my early work, and the ringleader interpreted this as a threat from intelligent individuals. The ringleader informed her that I was a submissive male and that she needed a commanding figure in her life. If I had known, I would have yelled and threatened. But get in line. My wife still has a job, but only just. My wife was one of the persons that witnessed the cake. The 3 wish her a fair partner or boss. And according to her 2 other co-workers who were lateral to her, the boss immediately halted the affair, warned her to only speak with him via email, and that if she ever attempted to show up in his office alone, he would summon a co-worker. The three witches quickly turned on her and publicly chastised her for committing such a terrible act. According to her, the other co-workers were uninterested in her soap drama. As a result, no reports were sent to human resources. She said her three buddies doing a 180 on her quickly jolted her out of her haze. She appeared embarrassed and claimed she had to ask for $5,000. I was perplexed because there was money still in her account. I made it clear that she had it. She was living with her mother. She did not have any substantial expenses. It turned out that the ringleader and the other two witches wanted to be compensated for their silence. They're blackmailing her and giving her a deadline so HR will be privy to all of the dark secrets. She pleaded for aid. I informed her that there was no going back to normal after this. Everything will change. That if she compromises now, there will be more money later. It's best for her to report herself, her boss, and her co-workers. It would be more effective than spending restless nights waiting for the knife to fall. She seemed to hem and haw about it, but she eventually asked the big question. What about us? Where does this leave us? I informed her there was no us. That's finished, and she should get herself a lawyer to go over the divorce. I can only advise her on how to deal with her current predicament at work. However, she will most likely need to pursue another career following this. I also told her she needed to go to therapy herself because she was laughing in my face while screaming for help. A week later, they require assistance in getting their bearings. She gestured at the cake and all I responded was, "Yeah, I'm seeing someone about that." She left shortly after that. There's no news on whether she'll take my counsel or try to pay her co-workers blackmail. Why is it always co-workers? Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.